And welcome to the TEDx Third Ward podcast. I'm your host for today. I'm also the curator of TEDx Third Ward, Durrel Douglas. And today we're going to talk with a few of the folks that will take the stage at Match Theater January 10th in Houston, Texas. TED is all about big ideas and inspiring curiosity. We're going to hear a little bit from our folks today who did something crazy. They signed up to do a TEDx talk. They're going to take the big red dot in just a few weeks. I want each of you to introduce yourself and tell us why you want to do a TEDx talk. And we'll start with you, Kenneth.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to applaud you because this is a major opportunity and you really opened the door for a lot of us, who wouldn't have it otherwise. Right?
Awesome.
So for me, TEDx was way far out in the next 5 years, but it's time to make it happen now. Coming from Houston, being from Fifth Ward, having a unique occupation flying airplanes, it was something that I wish somebody would have told me when I was younger. So I feel like the message that I'm sharing, though I'm talking about airplanes, it's really about the people who poured into me that allowed me to get there, right? So people who follow me on social media, who've seen the Blue Angel flights, who've seen the fun stuff I do in airplanes. Yeah, that's cool, but inside every airplane, there's a human, and there's a story inside of every. And people don't realize that, right? So I love the fact that they follow it and it's positive, but what I try to convey is there's a story behind every pilot, every mechanic, every air traffic controller. And they're not always positive. Everybody has a story. So that's what I'm hoping to get. And, this TEDx is an opportunity for me to share that on top of my life experiences.
Awesome. Next, the next speaker that we're going to talk to is into neuroscience.
Yeah.
I remember reading your intro when you applied and thinking like, wow. So tell us why you're doing a TEDx and who you are.
Yeah, I'm Terry Williams, based here in Houston, Texas, and I'm a Harvard-trained executive neuroscience coach. I know that's a lot of words, a lot of syllables, right? But basically what it means is that I'm a geek. I help us think about what we think about because I believe when we reframe mindsets, we can change our whole life and unlock new and wonderful outcomes. And I wanted to do a TEDx because I'm a geek and I study people's written and spoken works. I love literature. I'm a reader like you wouldn't believe. And then I love to hear people orate on a stage. Communication is always something that I've always enjoyed and really, I never experienced stage fright like most people do. I get excited about the idea that I can share an idea and implant that in somebody else's head. And now there's this synergistic effect where 1 + 1 wasn't 2, 1 and 1 made 11. There's big change that happens in the world when people communicate brilliant ideas to happy receivers of that message. And so I would follow people who had been on a TED or TEDx stage, and then I noticed these are the people I'm listening to. These are becoming my mentors, my coaches, folks I've never met a day in my life, but every word they've written in a book has touched me. Brene Brown, for example. And so I look at TED as this launch pad moment for not just ideas worth spreading, but humans worth following. And so I wanted to put my name in that hat and see if I could maybe find a home on the red dot. And I'll be very honest. I've spoken this to you in person, but I want to say it here for the record as well. When I heard this man's story was the first moment I said, you know what, I might not get selected, and that's okay. I'll root for him because and I'm sure you're going to get more into your story as we connect today, but growing up in the hood, underprivileged with lack of resources and a fear of heights, and then the brothers flying with the Blue Angels. That's insane. You talk about overcoming insurmountable odds. And then Sherara, shout out to you as well. I love how you talk about owning a room with confidence. I've taken so many notes off of everything I've heard you share. So I'm really excited to see your speech as well.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And speaking of owning the room, we had TEDx Media Day a few weeks ago. And I wasn't there for most of it because I was giving my own TEDx talk.
Amen.
But I look at the footage and you're like a ballerina moving about the room. So tell us who you are and what made you want to do a TEDx?
Those moves that you saw was just because I was trying to show off my shoes. But you know what? Just to piggyback on, I feel like we are all cousins in this space, and I like to say that. And I'm also going to applaud you because bringing together some elite speakers with elite stories is going to absolutely put TEDx Third Ward on the map and be the premier TEDx location. So kudos to you. And we share the last maiden name. My maiden name is Williams, so we are definitely cousins. But
yeah, we can look that up. You're gonna find a trace somewhere like, is your auntie so and so? That's my second cousin.
And you know how we do. But my name is Sherara, and I know it sounds like a small country somewhere in the world that we never heard of. But my parents were ambitious, and my talk is about owning a room. And my life's work has absolutely been about facilitating connection through the way that we express ourselves. And I say that self-reflection leads to powerful self-expression. And the tool that we use is communication, it is storytelling. And oftentimes people walk into spaces and they want to own the conversation, they want to own the decision, they want to own their truth, but closed mouths don't get what? Amen, don't get fed. And so this for me is an opportunity it's almost like actualizing within actualizing. So if I'm out here teaching, coaching, guiding, and leading people to own a room, to command an audience, then what I gotta be doing? I better be doing it. Yeah. And so TEDx for me, and a stage and a platform, is the actualization of what it means to own a room. And like you, Terry, Kenneth, hearing these stories, like, OMG, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Lord God, just let me be that top 16, let me be that top 16. But it's been school for me because I've been able to sit alongside other people exploring their story and how it has impact, not only just on the people around us, but then perhaps for the world. And I have been able to learn, I have been able to practice. I usually am the one doing the teaching and the coaching. And I didn't even talk a whole lot. I was listening, so I was taking all types of notes, building out frameworks. So it's an absolute pleasure to share stage, to share practice, to share company with such amazing stories.
Absolutely. So chances are the people that are out there are either thinking of doing a TEDx themselves. They've got a big idea. They're thinking of applying what is one thing, I want to start with you, Sherara. What's one thing in this process, because it's weeks of preparation, what's one thing that has been like a shock or like a surprise thing for you in this process so far? And anybody can feel free to go ahead if you need a moment.
Yeah, I would say that the origin story is something that has been profound. I thought that my charisma and my theatrics would hold me down. But when I would hear everyone else's stories, I was like, I ain't got no rags to riches. You know what I'm saying? I ain't slept in my car. I ain't had no diseases. I got both my parents. It's like, what am I going to tell that's going to be compelling, right? But that's actually been my story. I feel like I've never really had a story. So I would tell other people's stories. So in this, I've discovered that I do have a story. Well, I knew I did. I just didn't know what it was. But listening to other people's stories, I found my own story. But then when you get ready to craft your talk, yes, it's about your story, but I've also learned that it's not about you, though. It's the lessons, the nuggets, the insights, the frameworks, the actionables, the practicals, the things that you can extract from your story. But the clearer you are on your story, the more tangible the takeaways can be. And it's the takeaway that's powerful. So for anybody that's looking to do a TEDx or to do a talk in general, the research is in your story and the evidence is what is impact for your audience.
Yes. Oh, that is so, going through, because we had 607 people apply for the red dot that you were each taking. So first of all, sit in that. There were 154 semifinalists. And 30 of you will be on the stage on January 10th. What's your big aha or thing that, even as far as the process, because I've had folks to reach out that think that you sign up and you show up and you talk. No, it's a process.
Yeah, it's definitely a process. I'll say that for me, imposter syndrome was a big piece of the process. Shahara, I know you mentioned something kind of similar to that. There was, there were times in the process where I kind of wondered if I was enough, if I'll be honest. So I know that's not speaking specifically to the process, but really my internal processing.
Are you
And
serious?
it reminded me of, because I know I do a lot of inner child work, I do therapy, all of that. It
Neuroscience in
reminded me
Harvard
of-
was in your
Yeah.
application.
Hey, and there's a funny thing that happens though when we're surrounded by greatness. We choose to either accept our identity as one who is worthy of being among greatness, or we say, "Ooh, I don't know if I'm invited into that room yet." And so for me, it was a very rewarding and wonderful process where I felt a whole lot of affirmation in, oh shoot, this is an email saying I'm a semifinalist, right? And so here I am, to your point, being a person who works with people on mindset, belief, positivity, managing your mental mess, finding a way to ultimately believe that you are worthy. And yet I was definitely feeling like, ooh, after hearing Kenneth's story, I don't know, right? Dr. Emily Jamia is here presenting. Oh man, right? And so I was grateful for the re-education that yes, I'm always enough. I've always been enough. And that's not in a conquered way of am I enough, nor in a cocky way of, oh, I know I'm enough and I'm entitled. It's simply in the form of confidence, right there in that middle ground of I'm worthy of being here and yet have such deep respect for the others who are here. And so then in that, speaking to the process, one thing that was particularly beautiful for me was anytime I've ever spoken, people just say, oh, that's a really good speech. And that's what we're used to as people who talk, right? But being in the presence of so many great speakers, the critiques, the feedback, the challenges to change this one thing. Oh, if you said this word a little differently here, what could that do for the ultimate impact of your speech? And so I'm grateful for working with awesome mentors like yourself, like M.M. Washington, like Gina Carroll, who have helped me to refine and tweak and tighten things such that now I understand that difference between good and great, and I'm fully ready to step into it.
There you go.
You know what? I think we're more like the, because I can't remember when it was, but we all got on, kind of heard the pitches, and I felt the same way after I heard him speak. I had imposter syndrome. Literally, I was like, hold up. And I've spoken in many places before. Like, I don't have a problem with getting in front of 1,000 people and speaking, but the way he articulated compared to the way that I did, I knew it was worlds apart. So then I had to think to myself, do I just remain authentic and stay in my lane, or do I try to get to this space where I think he is? I was battling with that for a while. I never told you that until now, but I was so impressed with him and other speakers as well. And what I do is I do a lot of research. So I said, let me go to their Instagram page. Let me go see what they're really about. And these are high-level people. So now I'm questioning, am I really as good as I think I am? And I had to sit with that for a while, And it was more so having the right people around me too, because again, when I go to these schools, fifth graders love me, right? they see the suit.
Fifth graders are easy.
They're not, right? So I show them the pictures of me flying, and they see the suits. So I'm Superman to them, but I said, man, does this really hold up with adults? So it was a challenge, man. So for anybody that thinks about doing a TED Talk, for one, I say, life is short. You have to shoot your shot. You have to at least try. I couldn't live with myself not trying. And somebody else actually told me about it, and they sent me the Instagram page. I'm like, all right, let me just see what happens. So when I found out I was a semifinalist, I said, okay, this thing has some traction. But what I really learned more than anything, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of my speeches that I do are to pictures. So I have a presentation, and I speak to each picture for 15 seconds. So that's how I do my timing. Without pictures, it's been a real challenge for me figuring out this process. So I'm thinking I'm smart, and I'm like, oh, wow, I really don't have my timing down. So at one point, I was speaking for 15 minutes. Oh, no, that's not good. So that's really been something that I've had to overcome. But as again, I've learned a lot about myself. It's been a lot of reflection, and I learned I'm not as good as I think I am, but I'm going to get there, But I'm excited, and for anybody that's willing to put forth the effort and get that feedback, I think one of the biggest things we do after a flight is we call our debrief. And when you're brutally honest in a debrief, it makes the pilot better the next flight. So we do a lot of good debriefing, and people are honest with where they see our shortcomings are, and then we go back and fix it and tweak it, and that's probably been the biggest help so far.
That is so cool. You know, I forget which book it is. I want to say it's one by Malcolm Gladwell, where it's Outliers. They talked about the fact that when the second officer is actually flying the plane,
Yeah.
you're less likely to have errors, or you're less likely to have, because when the first captain, or what is it called?
Captain.
Okay. First captain is flying, the second captain is less likely to say something. But when it's the other way around, that first captain has no ills about saying, hey, I think this is this way, or hey, let's look at that. So I got to do part 1 of the podcast with y'all. The rest of this series is going to be hosted by Brenda Valdivia, who's also going to be the announcer for your big day. So I've got to ask each of you questions. Is there anything that you would like to ask me? And you can each ask me something.
I got a question.
Yes.
And I've mentioned this before, and I think what made me feel so proud and excited to do Houston 3rd Ward was to see your vision. And not even that you explained it outright, but you were planting seeds. What about this? And this is coming, and that is coming. Even with the selections, the variety of speakers that you chose and from all across the country. So tell me more. What is the grand vision for TEDx 3rd Ward?
I want TEDx 3rd Ward to be sort of the standard of TEDx. I think, the reason why I got the TEDx license was because first I wanted to be a speaker myself. And I found out you can't have the license and speak at your own event. So I was like, But just the opportunity to meet people like each of you has been a huge part. Number 2, the synergy and the exponential, just organic, power building that happens when Sherara meets Kenneth, meets Terry. That is really like the bigger vision. And I think what we demonstrate here sort of becomes a model for what organic organizing, what organic bringing people together to get things done looks like. And then lastly, I'll say, at a point in our nation and in our world where there's so much division, you don't always have to have a town hall to hear great ideas. Great ideas come from the people that are to your left and your right. And doing it outside of an advocacy space, outside of a political space, is just a beautiful thing to allow that organic, cross-pollination to happen. Yeah.
Awesome. Similar question, because I was going to ask kind of what's the vision as well. The origin story. So you spoke about how you wanted to give a TED Talk. And by the way, shout out to you recently speaking at TEDx Greenhouse Road. That's amazing. Outside of just the desire to be in a TEDx space or to be a speaker, what else lies behind that vision? And I ask that kind of framing it here. From getting to know you a bit, from following you on social media, I pick up on these awesome nuggets from your past, past jobs, past lives lived, lessons learned in those spaces. You storytell this so beautifully, by the way. And then coming into this lane, you are a multi-passionate doer of things, right? You've got a lot going on. What inspired you to add this to your fleet of the things you chose to carry?
Most of the things that I've done have just been, I didn't think this was going to turn into this. I honestly didn't. I thought maybe we do an event, maybe 50 people come. We weren't even going to charge for tickets the first time. I didn't know who would apply. Who wants to apply, right? I will say, taking chances, taking that leap is a huge part of it. I will also say, the reason why this even came up, I mentioned him already. Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite authors. And I did a little bit of research. I'm working on a book, by the way. I did a little bit of research because I've worked with coaches twice. And I could tell we weren't heading in the right direction. So we got to a certain point, and I was like, I'm still going to pay you the rest of your money, but let's just stop this. And so Malcolm Gladwell would shop his ideas around. He would group, focus group. He would focus group his big ideas. The same way comedians go to the little clubs before they do the arenas. He did TEDx talks. So if you actually look, David and Goliath, and I want to say it's Tipping Point, were both TEDx talks. And that's how he got to the book. So that's where that came from. I think, we live in an existence where a lot of folks are not taking chances because before you apply for the TEDx, you have to have X, Y, and Z. Before you write the book, you have to have X, Y, and Z. There are no rules. And so to that, I would just say, like, living a life of not working the rules. Did each of you get the PDF of the production manual for today's podcast? No, we just sat down. And that is the way I live life. Not all the time, clearly, but when possible, I think there's a certain benefit that only comes from whimsy and spontaneity that like allows creativity to truly be unlocked.
Love that.
For me, and we mentioned this before when we were at the mixer.
Yeah.
As you say, you do a lot of things. Do a
Yeah.
lot of things very well.
Thank you.
Professionally as well. I think you're very professional with everything you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So as you're looking at the previous year compared to this year, I know there's been a quantum leap.
Yeah.
Just from your assessment up to this point right now, just one thing that you think has been kind of your, you would do differently as you going into the next one, right? So what's your lesson learned? Not to put you on the spot.
No, it's good. I'm trying to measure my words.
A little tea.
Measure.
But yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about this. I know this is
Yeah.
a big undertaking. So
Yes, I'll say. So from that one to this one, I will say it was really hard to narrow it down. It really was. And so if y'all remember, I don't remember if it was calls that we would have. Somewhere I was mentioning, I'm trying to figure out the best way to make this happen in a way that is meaningful and it still gives the red dot that it's supposed to give. And so, I mean, that was one part. One of the things that we did differently from last time to this time, I have more of a say in who was on stage because that was, But from this one to the next one, I will say, like, really looking at folks' why, looking at the speaker's why. Because what I'm realizing is some people's why is actually to, as Sherara said, to like use my story as not the anchor, but it's just to illustrate this bigger idea. And that's not the case for everybody. So I think that's one of the things. And then number two, I'm looking at like expanding the team. There are a lot of people that want to do more on the back end, and you'll get to meet some of those people later. But yeah, I'll say that's it.
Cool.
And so this has been part one of the TEDx Third Word podcast for 2026. Technically, it's December 2025. But if you're thinking of sharing a big idea, if you're thinking of taking on the red dot, I encourage you to do so. Again, this has been Durrel Douglas, and thank you for watching part one.